Ladies and gentlemen, the following segment of the podcast is presented exclusively by the Heritage Foundation. For 52 years, Heritage has fought tirelessly for America's founding principles and advancing conservative public policies. Much more than a think tank, Heritage is a conservative policy powerhouse, fighting for the everyday American to advance common sense policies and dismantle the D.C. bureaucracy. Our founding fathers gave us an extraordinary system of government, and the Heritage Foundation is dedicated to defending the heritage and carrying on their legacy for future generations. So get involved by completing their national survey on President Trump's agenda by visiting heritage.org/Levin. That's heritage.org/Levin. Paid for by the Great Heritage Foundation.
He's here. He's here. Now, broadcasting from the underground command post, deep in the bowels of a hidden bunker, somewhere under the brick and steel of a nondescript building, we've once again made contact with our leader, Mark Levin.
Hello, America. Mark Levin here. Our number, 877-381-3811, 877-381-3811. Let me start this way, America. Due process, illegal aliens, and the know-nothings. You're hearing it in the left-wing press, in the never-Trump editorial pages and columns, interviews with former federal prosecutors and more. You cannot and must not deport anyone without some kind of notice and due process. That's the American way. That's compelled by our Constitution. So I'm laying down a marker now. You'll hear this regurgitated elsewhere, no doubt, after. Yet no matter how much I look, I cannot find anything from these people on how this is supposed to actually work. What kind of due process are they talking about? The kind of due process that applies to citizens? If not, then what lower standard suffices as constitutional due process? And who decides? Immigration judges? Federal district judges? Exactly how would due process of any kind be administered to millions and millions of illegal immigrants? We don't have courts. That is, we don't have enough courts of any kind in our country to handle the tsunami of cases that would be involved in millions and millions of cases. In other words, our government could never process all these people, meaning a massive number of illegal immigrants would be able to stay here indefinitely. Effectively, this is massive amnesty. And how would we force them to appear in court in the first place? Even now, millions don't show up on their court dates. They just disappear into the population. This was all intentional. The border was open to anyone. In fact, aliens were encouraged to come here, and hundreds of thousands were flown into the country under a bastardized parole process, which was instituted by a Biden executive order in the contravention of federal law. This is the Cloward-Piven strategy. Flood the system, overwhelm the system, break the system, and in doing so, achieve your goals. The same people in the Democrat Party and the media and their never-Trump sycophants who opened the border and solicited the illegal entry of millions of aliens into our country, and who don't give a damn about any of the women who were sold into sex slavery and the hundreds of thousands of missing unaccompanied minors, now claim to be concerned about due process when their objective is to prevent the deportation of millions of aliens they brought here in the first place. Oh, and to those legal analysts on websites and in the media, rather than your self-righteous moral preening, why don't you lay out your legal and administrative program so we can all benefit from your enlightened wisdom on how to remove millions of illegal aliens who are illegally imported by the Biden regime? That's all. What do you think of that, Mr. Producer? The point is, ladies and gentlemen, we don't even have a legal infrastructure to process millions and millions of people through some kind of due process rights. And what makes due process constitutional? Some lower level of due process. What's the standard? We don't have one. We don't know. Now, some might point, well, look at our immigration laws. Under this circumstance and uncircumstance, that's a little bit of the tail wagging the dog. It's not what I'm talking about, this circumstance or that circumstance. I'm talking about millions and millions of aliens who are in the country. You don't know in advance whether this or that applies. You got to find them and find out whether this or that applies. And it applies in a small percentage of the cases. The vast majority of the people who are here illegally, the crime that they committed is their presence here illegally. I'm just wondering how you're going to process them and how first of all, you're going to force them to show up. And so there are serious issues here. And the people who masterminded this illegal immigration, massive importation in violation of our immigration laws, are now many of the same lawyers, same politicians, same think tanks and ethnic front groups who are complaining about due process. And for our friends at National Review, and I'm not going to call them out by name because I don't want to humiliate them, don't you get sick and tired of writing to yourselves? If you have a plan, let's see it. Let's see it now. If you believe due process should apply to everybody, and I mean everybody, before they're to be deported, then tell us what kind of due process. Full-throated due process that United States citizens get? Something short of that? Like what? What will withstand constitutional challenge? What does the Constitution compel? Write it. Tell us. Well, Congress can pass. No. This is an issue of due process under the Constitution. Congress can't change it by statute. You're not messing around here with one of these backbencher slip and fall lawyers. Somebody who actually knows the topic. I am asking you. I am calling you out. I am challenging you right now. What is the constitutional due process standard that you're thinking about? Who determines it? Administrative law judges, federal district judges? I assume the Supreme Court at some point will get to write it and make it up. So much for originalism, but nonetheless. Just tell me. And then tell me how administratively this is going to be enforced. You know, it's one thing to have a standard now, whatever that standard is, which I would love to see, so I can question it. But whatever that standard is, notice, they'll say. Okay, great, notice, whatever it is. How do you compel people to show up? How do you compel them to meet their scheduled court date? Which courts are we talking about? We certainly don't have enough administrative immigration judges, let alone federal judges. Can you imagine 10 million people flooding the system? There'll be no time for any other kind of cases. What should we do? Hire 10,000, 20, 50,000 administrative law judges? What should we do? Add another 1,000 of these genius lawyers to federal district judgeships? How are we going to handle this? I want to know. Because Biden destroyed the system. And what all these people are arguing for, hear me now, America, Mr. and Mrs. America, put down your sandwich, raise the radio in your car. Mr. and Mrs. America, what's going on here is an argument for massive, massive amnesty. Because we cannot handle all this. It's impossible. We've never seen anything like this before. We've never seen anything like this before. I went back and looked at the due process issues that arose when Eisenhower had the military round up people and send them out of the country. Mexicans, many Mexican Americans accidentally. Notice how the Democrats and the media love Eisenhower. They figure he's a rhino, but he did what he did. He called it Operation Wetback. I didn't. That's a racist phrase. He used it. So did Cesar Chavez, by the way. Because he felt these people were purposely undermining the farm workers' union movement. But that aside, what they're asking for is something that's truly impossible. And they know it. And they know it. And they have radical judges backing them up. One in Boston, who just ruled that 500 and some thousand, I think it's 530,000, give or take, people who were actually flown into this country under an executive order signed by Biden. Signed by Biden. An executive order which effectively rewrote the parole provision of our immigration laws. In other words, bastardized them so he could bring them all in. She just ruled that you cannot deport those people, even though that was done by executive order and can be undone by executive order. She said no. Some sort of due process rights apply. And I'm sitting here scratching my head. Really? And which due process rights are you talking about? Which ones? I notice in the Supreme Court's ruling that everybody points to here, which I have in front of me, which is a tiny little thing, 8 or 9 pages, and half of it's the dissent. Well, did they dissent, or what did they do? What they always do. No, they didn't really dissent. They dissented, but said they didn't dissent. That would be Sotomayor and the rest, with their own disposition of the application. The relevant part of this that people are citing, people are debating over the language, and they're debating over it because the Supreme Court was ambiguous. That's why, and purposely so. The lower court's order properly requires the government to, quote-unquote, facilitate Abrego Garcia's, this is a guy from Maryland who's now a cause célèbre, an illegal alien who should be deported, his release from custody in El Salvador, and to ensure that his case is handled as it would have been had he not been improperly sent to El Salvador. The intended scope of the term effectuate in the district court's order is, however, unclear and may exceed the district court's authority. The district court should clarify its directive with due regard for the deference owed to the executive branch in the conduct of foreign affairs. For its part, the government should be prepared to share what it can concerning the steps it has taken and the prospect of further steps. The order hitherefore entered, the Chief Justice is vacated. You know what this says? Nothing. That's why people are fighting over it. It's a great victory. It's a great loss. The word facilitate, perfectly ambiguous, bureaucratic word. Effectuate. What they're saying here is, as I read the tea leaves, look, there is a separation of powers issue. The executive branch handles foreign policy. So when you say effectuate, lower court, you need to spell out exactly what you mean so you're not interfering in foreign policy and not violating separation of powers. In terms of the word facilitate, the government, meaning the Trump administration, needs to facilitate the release from custody in El Salvador of Garcia. back to the United States. So the first part of the same of that sentence contradicts the next sentence. You need to facilitate the return, but effectuate in the district court's order. Unclear how that may proceed. So clarify what you mean by effectuate, and while you're at it, government, facilitate. Now, Mr. Producer, does this make any sense to you? Let me read it again, the relevant part. The order properly requires the government to facilitate. They're putting quotes around it because that's the lower court's language. Garcia's release from custody in El Salvador, and to ensure that his case is handled as it would have been had he not been improperly sent to El Salvador. The intended scope of the term effectuate in the district court's order is, however, unclear and may exceed the district court's authority. What's going on here? What the Supreme Court could have said to put an end to this is, look, maybe errors were made in this process, but as a practical matter, even if Mr. Garcia is returned, they will immediately institute deportation orders and have him removed anyway. Putting aside MS-13 and all the rest. Putting it aside. It's pointless. That's the point. Moreover, if the Supreme Court has some notion of what it means by a process, then spell it out for the other 10 million illegal aliens. And tell us how the lower courts are supposed to handle this. Tell us. Or you have to leave it to National Review and the editorial page of the Wall Street Journal to go on and lecture and tell us absolutely zippo. Nothing. I'll be right back.
Mark Levin.
Listen, folks, if you're like me, you're passionate about protecting our American values. That's why I trust the Heritage Foundation. They're dedicated to promoting policies based on free enterprise, limited government, and traditional American values. The Heritage Foundation does more than just produce policy recommendations. They're mobilizing conservatives across the country. And right now, they need you to take action by completing their national survey on President Trump's agenda. Your responses to this survey will help guide Heritage leadership as they work closely with folks in Washington to promote your values, secure America's borders, and restore our freedoms. Here's what I want you to do. Visit heritage.org/Levin, heritage.org/Levin to complete your survey. It's very, very important. My friends at Heritage need you to act now to help them maximize the impact on President Trump's first 100 days. Heritage is committed to preserving our founding fathers' principles and ensuring that America remains a beacon of freedom and opportunity. So I know you won't sit on the sidelines. You'll get involved, please, today, and make your voice heard. Visit heritage.org/Levin. That's heritage.org/Levin. Please complete your survey today. That's heritage.org/Levin, paid for by the Great Heritage Foundation. Now we have this nutjob judge named Boasberg in Washington, D.C. And I go through his opinion here. It's a long opinion where he's setting up the contempt, criminal contempt, not even civil contempt for the Trump administration. Now keep in mind the Supreme Court already said he lacks jurisdiction, but I guess he's claiming jurisdiction as it applies to contempt for them not following his order, which, by the way, was not written as it is required to be in that district. But he doesn't care. He just bulldozes right through. The guy apparently is unhinged about this. He's a radical kook. He's unhinged. And, of course, these Venezuelan mobsters are in prison in El Salvador. And he takes it personally. So he doesn't have the temperament to be a judge. More like a defendant. Nonetheless, I want to read something that he put in his opinion that was pointed out to me by my buddy Mike here. And let you know just how unhinged this guy is. We'll be right back. Folks, I need to talk to you about something crucial to the future of America. Our friends at the Heritage Foundation are on the front lines fighting for our conservative values. Heritage is dedicated to promoting policies that will help bolster our economy, protect our borders, and uphold the rule of law. They're working tirelessly to defend our Constitution and the principles that make America exceptional. To help accomplish this, they need you to complete their national survey on President Trump's agenda today. So you can participate in this survey by going to heritage.org/Levin. That's heritage.org/Levin. Your responses are crucial to this survey, and they'll provide Heritage leadership with crucial feedback as they work closely with the folks in Washington to promote your values, secure America's borders, and restore our freedoms. By completing this very important survey today, you're standing up for the values that have made this country great. And my friends at Heritage need you to act now to maximize their impact on President Trump's first 100 days. So please don't wait. Our future depends on you. Together, we can make a difference, and future generations inherit a nation that is free, prosperous, and strong. So please, right now, visit heritage.org/Levin, heritage.org/Levin, complete your survey, and join the fight for America's future. That's heritage.org/Levin, paid for by the Great Heritage Foundation.
Saving America, one show at a time. The Mark Levin Show, 877-381-3811.
Oh, baby. Here we be. It's a great honor to be with you folks. So this Judge Boasberg is the Washington, D.C. judge, and I can understand if you're getting confused by all this. There's so many of these crazy-ass, unhinged federal left-wing judges, it's hard to take. We got one in Boston that just said that the president cannot, by executive order, deport the people that Biden brought in by executive order. More talk about due process, but they don't explain what they mean by that. Is it executive branch due process of some kind? What are they talking about? And this has been going on for days, and you'll watch all the TV you want, listen to all the radio you want. You don't get an answer because you don't even get the question asked. What are they talking about exactly when they say due process? And if they know what they're talking about, what's their authority for it? And if you're not talking about full-blown constitutional due process, what the hell are you talking about, and how is it constitutional? And who's going to decide? Well, eventually the Supreme Court. I know that, but that's not what I'm saying. Assertions are being made. Not only do you need to back them up, but even if you assume you're right, how is this going to play out? How does this work? How does it work? You know, I talk as somebody who used to be chief of staff to an attorney general, and so my mind works. You go from the philosophical, you go to the constitutional, you go to the legal, but you've got to figure these things out, right? That's what you've got to do. But they haven't. So here we have a judge. Let's see here, Boasberg. Now, the Supreme Court told him that you don't have jurisdiction, that this case doesn't belong in Washington, D.C. It belongs in Texas. What are you doing with the case? But the guy's going to continue to pursue this contempt issue, criminal contempt, not even civil contempt, criminal contempt. And so there's two ways to look at that. Number one, tell me, do you get this anywhere else on radio? Honest to God, Mr. Producer. Or TV? No. I'm walking you through this because this is your life. This affects you. What these lawyers are doing, what these courts are doing, what the government's doing, what these radical left-wing groups are doing, it all affects your life. You look around and say, where'd all these people come from? And so I'm telling you what's going on. So the judge might say, look, I don't have jurisdiction on the case anymore, but I sure as hell have jurisdiction on the order that I issued, and they violated my order. I don't believe they did, because it wasn't in writing, number one. And when he put it in writing, it was too late. But let's add the third point, which is clearly what he was doing was interfering with foreign policy, because these Venezuelan gang members were sent here by another country. They're an international gang. They do conduct themselves, if you look at the definition, in terrorist ways. And the Secretary of State has said they are, and that's the end of it. That's it. There's no judicial review and all the rest. Where's that come from? Well, we're going to do it anyway. And so for all those sticklers, and I'm one of them, for following the procedures in the Constitution, this assumes a lot of stuff about the Constitution empowering this court that doesn't exist. You're dealing with the entrails. You're not dealing with the source of the entrails. So he writes here, next steps on page 43. So now what? The court last details the next steps that these proceedings may take. Now, first of all, listen to that line. The court last details, is this English? The next steps that these proceedings may take. Oh, okay, got it. First, before initiating any criminal contempt proceedings, courts typically allow the party an opportunity, the contemptuous party, an opportunity to purge in contempt. That is, to remedy its violation by voluntarily obeying the court order. So he's saying, get all these Venezuelan criminal international gang members back into the United States. You understand what I'm saying? Because that's the only way to, quote-unquote, fix this situation. That is, to remedy its violation by voluntarily obeying the court order. A court should first, says the Supreme Court, apply coercive remedies in an effort to persuade a party to obey its orders and only make use of the more drastic criminal sanctions when the disobedience continues. That party happens to be another branch of government that says he has no authority, but he doesn't care. He doesn't care. The district court will normally preface a contempt citation with an order directing either compliance with the subpoena or showing him an excuse for the noncompliance. And he says the most obvious way for defendants to do so here is by asserting custody of the individuals who were removed. That is, the Venezuelan hundreds of Venezuelan gang members. Custody. Who were removed in violation of the court's class-wide temporary restraining order. Got that? So they might avail themselves of the right to challenge their removability through a habeas proceeding. So everybody gets a habeas proceeding. That is the right to petition a court and to say they have the wrong person, or they shouldn't have me here, or whatever challenge they wish to raise. And they have a right to know what the challenge is that the government's bringing. It's obvious what the government is saying. You're here illegally and get the hell out of here. So even a habeas process is almost, I mean, it's in the Constitution. You go through the process. I don't know that it applies to these people, by the way, again. But let's say it does. I mean, we've had the court say it applies at some level, elementary level, to terrorists. And I wrote that it shouldn't. Even Andy McCarthy wrote that it shouldn't. But I guess he's changed his view when it comes to Venezuelan gang members who've been determined to be terrorists by the executive branch. Per the items of the TRO, the government would need to release any of these individuals. It says would not need to, nor would it need to transport them back to the homeland. The court will also... What? So they can do what? A petition by FedEx? By a virtual... I mean, I don't even know. The guy doesn't know. He doesn't say. The court will also give defendants an opportunity to propose other methods of coming into compliance, which the court will evaluate. So he wants the executive branch to come in, not on bended knee, bended on both knees, and say, you know what, Your Honor, we're sorry. Yes, we're sorry. We in the executive branch, we shouldn't conduct immigration this way or foreign policy this way. No, we're sorry. In the event that defendants do not choose to purge their contempt, the court will proceed to identify the individuals responsible by determining whose, quote, specific act or omission, unquote, caused the noncompliance. At the suggestion of the government in the last hearing, the court will begin by requiring declarations. Should those be unsatisfactory, the court will proceed either to hearings with live witnesses. So here's what's going on. These judges either got together formally on a phone or something, or one sees what the other's doing, and they said, okay, now that we've interfered with the executive branch, now we're going to punish them if they don't if they don't comply with us, we federal district judges. Because there's another federal district judge in Maryland. In this Garcia case, you know, nice family man and all that. No, he's not a nice guy. He's not a nice family man. They have more information in 2021 that he beat his wife. Oh, excuse me, I didn't get that piece. Was part of MS-13. And that judge has ordered him returned in Maryland. You got a Senator Van Hollen. We mentioned this last night. What a complete lowlife this guy is. He went to El Salvador to beg for this guy's release. This is how they feel about illegal aliens. This is what they believe. Not you. Got Soros judges and prosecutors all over the place. Got domestic criminals roaming all over the place. Now we have foreign gangs and criminals roaming all over the place. As far as we know, we have terrorists all over the place. It's okay. Hey, Joe Biden did what he did. That's okay. He doesn't have to account to anybody for anything, even if he had his wits. Even if he had his wits. So this judge in Maryland says, hey, government and government lawyers, you better have your suits ready and your underwear ready and everything else. Because if you're thinking about taking a vacation over over Easter weekend, that ain't happening. You're going to be here for 2 weeks and you're going to be deposed. So now the government's going to be deposed. Their lawyers are going to be deposed. You see, they're trying to wear down the Department of Justice. They're trying to wear down the Trump administration. So we have one judge who's poised to issue a criminal contempt order, who doesn't even have jurisdiction anymore. We have another judge in Maryland, who's planning to take depositions of individuals who represent the government. And we have other judges who are contemplating similar things depending on the facts of their cases. That's what they're doing. So we need, is that what you're saying?
Are they going to appoint new special prosecutors?
Is who going to?
These judges.
Oh, I don't think so, but they could. One of them intimated that. My friend Mike's here, who works at Landmark Legal. You know, Mike, one of them intimated that they might.
Right, exactly.
This one, right?
Right.
Boasberg has intimated that he might appoint his own special counsel to get to the bottom of all this. Now, think about that. Thank you for reminding me about that. Think about that. And so the goal here is to try and stop any effort on mass deportations. The goal here is to cripple the ability of the Trump administration to address the illegal mass importations by the prior administration. That is exactly what's going on here. Exactly what's going on here. And this judge, as Mike reminds me, even intimated he might appoint a special counsel on behalf of him, the judge, to investigate this. Got it? All right, we'll move on. I'll be right back.
Mark Levin.
Listen, folks, if you're like me, you're passionate about protecting our American values. That's why I trust the Heritage Foundation. They're dedicated to promoting policies based on free enterprise, limited government, and traditional American values. The Heritage Foundation does more than just produce policy recommendations. They're mobilizing conservatives across the country. And right now, they need you to take action by completing their national survey on President Trump's agenda. Your responses to this survey will help guide Heritage leadership as they work closely with folks in Washington to promote your values, secure America's borders, and restore our freedoms. Here's what I want you to do. Visit heritage.org/Levin, heritage.org/LEVIN to complete your survey. It's very, very important. My friends at Heritage need you to act now to help them maximize the impact on President Trump's first 100 days. Heritage is committed to preserving our founding fathers' principles and ensuring that America remains a beacon of freedom and opportunity. opportunity. So I know you won't sit on the sidelines. You'll get involved, please, today, and make your voice heard. Visit heritage.org/Levin. That's heritage.org/Levin. Please complete your survey today. That's heritage.org/Levin, paid for by the Great Heritage Foundation. After the top of the hour, we're going to have Hans von Spakovsky on the program, Heritage Foundation Senior Legal Fellow, and we're going to talk about, among other things, but primarily, deportations and due process. What is meant by this? At the bottom, at 7:30 p.m., we're going to have, our friend Jonathan Turley. He's really good. I like this guy. And we're going to talk about, and in hour 3, we're going to have a very good friend, brilliant scholar, president of the Heritage Foundation, Kevin Roberts. I can count on one hand, Mr. Producer, how many times we've had 3 guests. But these are important guests, these are important issues, these are important times, and obviously throughout, we've got a lot to cover here, a whole lot. And we'll continue to do so. I'm looking for one of my documents here. It gets very busy here before I go on the program, you know. And we look over everything, and I got to go, and sometimes, like the audio. You know, Patty Morin, an angel mom whose daughter Rachel Morin was murdered horrendously. She appeared at the press conference today while all the press were concerned about the MS-13 member in Maryland. How much time do I have, Rich? And I want you to hear what she had to say because, you know, you don't get to hear from her. And I think Caroline Levitt is brilliant. I think Donald Trump is brilliant times 100. And so they said, you know, why don't you hear from one of the victims' families, not of this individual, but of individuals who are affected by illegal immigration. Cut 19, go.
Why are we not protecting the American citizens? It's just common sense. Why are we not protecting our children? And to have a senator from Maryland who didn't even acknowledge or barely acknowledged my daughter and the brutal death that she endured, leaving her 5 children without a mother and now a grandbaby without a grandmother, so that he can use my taxpayer money to fly to El Salvador to bring back someone that's not even an American citizen. Why does that person have more right than I do, or my daughter, or my grandchildren? I don't understand this.
Mm-hmm. Can you imagine going through this? Can you imagine? I can't. I just can't. And it's just horrible. Yes, to my friend who was texting me, yes, that's right. What remedies could the government have in place? This crackpot Judge Boasberg. What remedies? You can try and fix this before I hold you in criminal contempt. That's in, I thought that was page 43. As you read through it, it's in that section. As you go through it. And he's saying, they can try and fix this and come up with proposals, you know. Creative ideas. The only way that they can fix it, according to this judge, is either bring these terrorists back, or he said you don't necessarily have to move them back. So, government, you come up with a clever way to do this, but I have jurisdiction. So here's my problem with this. He's going to try and hold the order and try and hold them in contempt, but he's still violating the Supreme Court jurisdictional issue, which says, hey, you don't have any jurisdiction. He's telling them, you can fix this if you do X, Y, Z. Well, he doesn't have any authority. This segment of the podcast is exclusively sponsored by Pure Talk. Pure Talk offers great coverage and can save your family money on your wireless bill every single month. Go to puretalk.com to find the plan that's right for you. Thank you again for listening, and thank you so much for this sponsorship, Pure Talk.
He's here. He's here. Now, broadcasting from the underground command post, deep in the bowels of a hidden bunker, somewhere under the brick and steel of a nondescript building, we've once again made contact with our leader, Mark Levin.
Hello, America. Mark Levin here. Our number, 877-381-3811, 877-381-3811. Just to make certain everybody understands my point, this Judge Boasberg, in a very rambling decision at the very near the end on pages 43 and 44, he intimates, more than intimates, that he's going to hold the government in criminal contempt unless they fix the contempt, and that he has to give them the opportunity to do so. And he throws out a few ideas. You don't necessarily have to bring all these Venezuelan gangsters back to America, but you can do this, that, or the other, and you can come up with some creative ideas. And I'm thinking to myself, wait a minute. You may want to hold on to this potential contempt issue, but you have a problem. The Supreme Court said you don't have any jurisdiction. So in order for them to fix, quote unquote, the potential criminal contempt, the government, the administration, the Department of Justice would have to defy the Supreme Court, which ruled in its favor that the jurisdiction belonged, I think it was Texas or Louisiana, but I think it's Texas. So the judge is putting the government in the position where they cannot comply with his fix. Hans von Spakovsky, one of the great lawyers at the Heritage Foundation. Hans, do you understand what I'm saying?
Yeah, I was just stunned by Boasberg's order because he is defying the Supreme Court, and the person who is acting in contempt is Boasberg. Look, it's not just as the Supreme Court said he didn't have jurisdiction. The claims that were filed by the ACLU on behalf of these Venezuelans, the court said were not valid. Why? Mm-hmm. Because the only way to challenge the Alien Enemies Act is in a habeas corpus petition, and the ACLU didn't have that claim in there. What that means is that the Supreme Court just didn't just overrule his temporary restraining order, which is what he says in the order. They said he never should have heard this case in the first place. Yeah, that means that order that he issued was void from the moment he signed it. So how can he hold them in contempt for not complying, supposedly, with that order? That makes no sense whatsoever.
But they also made the point he has no geographic jurisdiction.
Right.
So that's a double.
Yeah, it's a double. He should have dismissed the lawsuit in front of him the moment he received the Supreme Court's order, and instead he's continuing to have it, even though the case should have been filed down in Texas under a habeas corpus petition.
It's crazy.
And look, here's the other thing. I've heard all these people defending Boasberg. Listen, Mark, when this case first came up, I quickly did some research. It took me 10 minutes to find the relevant case that the Supreme Court cited in its decision, a 1948 case called Ludke v. Watkins, which said the only way you can challenge an action under the Alien Enemies Act is through a habeas petition. That means when Judge Boasberg was holding a hearing that Saturday and then...
Hold on, for the audience.
Yeah.
There was no habeas petition, correct?
Correct. So that means that Boasberg, and look, it took me 10 minutes to find this case saying this was an invalid lawsuit by the ACLU. Either Boasberg is completely incompetent or he was deliberately ignoring that Supreme Court precedent and defying the court.
Mm-hmm. It's crazy. Absolutely outrageous. Then we got another judge in Boston. Here's Joe Biden, with executive order, he bastardizes what the parole provision of the immigration laws mean, and you know this, you're an expert on these immigration laws. Twist it into a pretzel. They bring in 530,000 illegal aliens. They solicit them and bring them into the country. Trump says, no, his executive order is, I'm removing them all. And this judge says, no, you're not. They get due process.
Yeah, well, the problem with that order is that what Biden did violated federal immigration law. Federal immigration law says that in order to grant the parole that he basically granted, it had to be done on an individualized case-by-case basis. Well, there's no way that there was a case-by-case evaluation.
No, we know for a fact, Cards, that they did not.
Right. So the fact that Biden violated the law makes it very clear that this president can reverse a prior violation by a president of the law. And the idea that, you can only revoke these on an individualized case-by-case basis when they weren't granted that way, again, is just another sign of the kind of rogue, out-of-control judges we have who think that they are the head of the executive branch, not the president.
Let me ask you a question. I've about had it with the moral preening of some of these former federal prosecutors, other people on TV talking about due process rights. What due process rights are they talking about? Full-fledged constitutional due process rights? Some kind of, this is just rhetorical, some kind of lower standard due process rights? And who gets to hear this? We're talking about 10 to 11 million illegal aliens. Those are the new ones. The courts, the immigration courts are already backed up to the tune of several millions. People say they're given court dates. 95% of them, according to the stats I read, don't even show up. What are these people talking about? That we should now have due process rights of some form. And they don't tell us what kind. For all of these illegal aliens, isn't this really amnesty, since our system cannot process this many people?
Well, anyone who says that aliens illegal in this country have the same judicial due process rights as any of the rest of us, obviously haven't read the Supreme Court decisions on this. Aliens who want to get into the country, aliens who want to re-enter the country, even those who were here before, like Mr. Garcia down in El Salvador, they have no due process rights. The Supreme Court said that in Shaughnessy versus Mezzi. That's a 1953 case, who said that the U.S. government can bar the entry of any alien. They have no right to be in the U.S. Once they're in the U.S., yeah, they have to have some due process. But again, the court in that case said it's only the amount of due process that Congress wants to give them, and it can be before an executive or administrative tribunal. Well, that's the immigration courts. And the big thing that everyone is missing, including the judges, for example, in the case involving Mr. Garcia, who he's not a Marylander, he's an El Salvadoran, is that he had his due process rights. He had an immigration court hearing back in 2019 at which he and his lawyers admitted he was in the U.S. illegally. Now, folks keep saying, but the judge said he shouldn't be sent back because he was afraid of a particular gang there, Barrio 18. Well, they're all missing the fact that under federal immigration law, the Attorney General of the United States has the right to overrule any decision of the immigration courts because they're not courts.
No, they're bureaucrats.
They're not even administrative law judges. They are simply agents under the law of the Attorney General. Well, Pam Bondi has overruled that immigration judge, has revoked that withholding order. And by the way, Barrio 18, the gang that this guy was supposedly scared of,
they don't exist anymore.
Yeah, exactly. So they're not even there. So he's gotten all the due process rights he's entitled to under the law. Oh, and by the way, the district court judge on this case, here's something else federal law says.
She's a crazy ass. I know that. He is. Yeah.
Yeah. If an illegal alien wants to appeal the decision of an immigration judge that he should be deported, federal law says the district courts have no jurisdiction. He has to go to a federal court of appeal.
All right, let me ask you a question. And this is my grave concern. We're talking about millions and millions of people. How do you give due process rights to millions and millions of people? In other words, how do you process some form of due process rights? It's impossible. We don't have the infrastructure for this, do we?
Well, we don't, and that is a serious problem, one that Congress could easily and quickly...
I don't think easily, Hans. Look, what are they going to do? Hire another 500,000 administrative law judges, or 200,000 or 50,000 or something like that? This takes time. I mean, and by the time all that's done, this administration will be over.
Well, what I'm talking about is taking away the administrative due process rights Congress has given.
Yeah, no, that would be very wise, but good luck getting that through the Senate. You see, these clowns are going to El Salvador to meet the MS-13 guy, begging for his release. That's how insane this is.
No, that's all very true. But at the very least, there are 1.5 million unenforced deportation orders, at least, sitting at the Department of Homeland Security. Every one of those aliens can be immediately removed from the country.
But for the public, I need them to understand, those are old cases, or older cases.
Right.
It's not the newer cases where all these Biden immigrants have come into the country. The vast majority of them aren't. And so they haven't even taken care of that, the backlog. And we're talking about another 10 million or 5 million or 8 million or 12 million or some millions of numbers. So as a practical matter, how would this work? You give them notice? How are you going to find them? You find them? Where do you bring them? Where do you bring them? Tell me.
Look, I mean, it is a problem, but on the other hand, there are good chunks of them that can be removed, including the 500,000 that can be removed immediately because the president has canceled Biden's unlawfully issued prior executive order.
Mm-hmm. I know what the other side's going to argue, and some left-wing judge might like it. A majority on the Supreme Court might go for it, which is, that's all well and good, but once they're here, they have those rights, even if what Biden did was improper, illegal, unconstitutional, whatever it is. They're here. The government persuaded them to come here. They even gave them an app. They flew them here. And so I'm just telling you what they're going to argue. And so it's not enough to say, okay, well, he shouldn't have done that, therefore get rid of them. See my point?
Well, I do see the point, but
I don't like it.
That argument would have to overcome Supreme Court precedent from the 40s and 50s, and the Supreme Court's going to have to overrule what they've said before.
Mm-hmm. I still can't get my hands around or my head around this idea of due process of any kind for tens of millions of illegal aliens, and that you've addressed the 500 and some thousand. I hope that happens. But the vast majority, if that's the case, they're not leaving. The vast majority of them won't even have a hearing because they won't show up. So I think this has been the plan from day one. Go ahead.
That could be, Mark, but remember, there are lots of things that the government can do to induce self-deportation. In fact, I wrote an op-ed about this a while ago about all the different things that can be done to, for example, make it difficult for them to get bank accounts, do all the things that you have to be able to do to be able to live and work every day. And those things they can do, and I think they can induce large numbers to self-deport.
I think that's great. But I'm trying to deal with this issue of due process. You see what I mean?
Yeah, no, I understand that.
Not alternatives. I'm trying to take it on, right on. People who don't self-deport, obviously, are the issue with respect to due process. People who do, it's irrelevant because they're gone. And you're right. We should encourage as many of the people to do that as possible. But I guarantee you there's still going to be millions of people left behind who are not going to self-deport. I mean, we know that right now.
Yeah, and, we do.
Yeah. Go ahead.
Well, I was just going to say there's no one solution to this. There are many solutions, all of which have to be applied at the same time. And the due process rights of these aliens is very limited, and that's something that to the extent they can, Pam Bondi, Secretary Noem have to take advantage of that to try to get out as many of the aliens. There's at least 2 million, I think, they can get out without having to deal with that particular issue.
Mm-hmm. All right, brother. Thank you. You're great. We appreciate it, Hans.
Thanks for having me.
All right. Thank you. That's Hans von Spakovsky, Heritage Foundation Senior Legal Fellow. Just terrific on immigration, on voting, and so many other issues. We'll be right back.
Mark Levin.
Don't get suckered into the same old free phone game by Big Wireless that comes with a lot of fine print, like requiring you to sign up for 4 lines plus activation fees, plus. And the end of the day, you've paid for that free phone 3 times over. Pure Talk is my sponsor, my wireless company. They have a much better offer. With a qualifying plan of just $35 a month, you can get a brand new Samsung Galaxy A26 for free. Now, this phone is virtually indestructible. Gorilla Glass captures beautiful wide-angle photos with next-generation camera lenses. All you need to do is switch to Pure Talk. For just $35 a month, you get unlimited talk, text, 15 gigs of data, more than you'll ever need, with mobile hotspot, all on one of America's most dependable 5G networks. Go to puretalk.com/Levin to make the switch. Again, that's puretalk.com/LEVIN to claim your free Samsung Galaxy with qualifying plan when you switch to Pure Talk. Wireless by Americans for Americans. I don't disagree that the administration should, and I guarantee you they are doing everything they can to deport as many people as they can, to encourage self-deportation. There are commercials running to that effect. They're trying to do a lot of things. Hans has a lot of ideas, too, all important. My problem is the majority, if not a large majority, are not going to self-deport. They're not going to leave on their own, even though, again, it's something that should be encouraged. And people are throwing around this phrase, due process. They not only don't know what they're talking about, they won't tell us what they mean. And even if it's executive branch, I'll call it executive branch due process. It takes a lot of people, a lot of time, folks. It just does. And I don't see an easy fix here for Congress. I mean, there's filibuster still in the Senate. And so that's not going to be overcome. The Democrats will block it, and you'll have your usual 3, 4, 5 Republicans that will join them. So there's not going to be a legislative fix. There's simply not. So I do think it's incumbent upon those who keep talking about due process, and do so, many of them earnestly, many of them not, to lay it out. To lay it out. The Supreme Court took a pass. It's taking a lot of passes. These things are building up. They're getting worse and worse. I agree again with Hans that these 530,000 who came here under the Biden executive order should be able to be removed under the Trump executive order. My fear is that a judge, particularly a left-wing judge, will say, well, one has nothing to do with the other. That executive order conferred some rights, as limited as they may be, as imperfect as they may have been applied to these people. Therefore, you can't just deport them. That is my fear with these radical left judges. We'll be right back. Don't get suckered into the same old free phone game by Big Wireless that comes with a lot of fine print, like requiring you to sign up for 4 lines plus activation fees, plus. And the end of the day, you paid for that free phone 3 times over. Pure Talk is my sponsor, my wireless company. They have a much better offer. With a qualifying plan of just $35 a month, you can get a brand new Samsung Galaxy A26 for free. Now, this phone is virtually indestructible. Gorilla Glass captures beautiful wide-angle photos with next-generation camera lenses. All you need to do is switch to Pure Talk. For just $35 a month, you get unlimited talk, text, 15 gigs of data, more than you'll ever need, with mobile hotspot, all on one of America's most dependable 5G networks. Go to puretalk.com/Levin to make the switch. Again, that's puretalk.com/LEVIN to claim your free Samsung Galaxy with qualifying plan when you switch to Pure Talk. Wireless by Americans for Americans.
Mark Levin, the thunder on the right. Call in now, 877-381-3811.
You know, there's not a lot of lawyers or law professors, for that matter, that I'm enthralled with, but there is one, Jonathan Turley, who really is a standout lawyer. And, of course, he wrote this great book. You can still get it. You really should. The Indispensable Right, Free Speech in an Age of Rage. We're linking to it on Amazon. And free speech makes all the difference in the world in any republic or democracy, that's for sure. First of all, Professor, thanks for coming on. I want to explore with you this Letitia James case. Look, no case is necessarily open and shut, but this seems like it's pretty close. Can you walk us through this?
Thank you for having me on, Mark. And it looks that way because it is. Unless these documents are falsified, I can't imagine a defense that could be raised here. The Supreme Court just recently in March handed down a case called Thompson, which turns on one of the statutes cited in the referral, 18 U.S.C. 1014. And the court narrowed the standard in terms of what you have to show in terms of a false statement. But even under Thompson, this would easily satisfy the court's view because this is just outrightly false. You know, she claims that a Virginia home was her principal residence. That was not and cannot be true because at the time she, and still is, an official of the New York government who must live within the state. She also claims in some papers that she's actually married to her father and also claims that a 5-unit building is a 4-unit building. Now, what's notable about those false statements is that each one worked towards a better rate, essentially, for her mortgage. So there was a reason why you would make these representations, even though they're false.
You know, you've had a lot of clients over your life defending them and so on. I just have to ask you this. You're a public figure. She is. She's the Attorney General of the state. She's bringing charges involving Donald Trump's land ownings and what his mortgages and so. Did it not even occur to her that somebody might look at her and at least make similar allegations, or was she so arrogant it just never bothered her?
Well, you know, Mark, I think that question is pretty profound, and the answer may be chilling, and that is she may actually know New Yorkers all too well. You know, she is a legal predator. She's not the prey in New York. Mm-hmm. They've weaponized the criminal code, and she doesn't have much of a fear that she's going to be prosecuted, at least in New York, or that anyone would use the law she used against Trump. I mean, remember, she used a law in New York which was absurd, which requires no victim at all. So this is the Attorney General who took a case to court where no one lost a dime. The bank actually wanted more business from Trump, and she actually wanted more than the $500 million fine that was imposed by the court. That law is not going to be applied against her, but she very well could be prosecuted under the federal statutes. People are charged regularly with doing exactly what she did. In fact, the district attorney in Baltimore was just convicted not long ago for this type of financial fraud.
So with this case, even though there's a variety of jurisdictions, at least in Virginia too, would the feds have a choice, or whether they bring it in Virginia, or since the predominance of the case is probably in New York, or can they split it up, or what do you think?
I'm so glad you asked that, Mark, because I think that's the most key question, and I think it takes a keen eye to see it, that the problem of going to New York is finding a jury that would convict her, just in the same reason you couldn't find a jury that would acquit Trump. And the Virginia connection is intriguing because that's where the home is located, and there is a possible claim that you could bring this case in that jurisdiction. But, most people assume it would have to be New York. It would be a fascinating trial even in New York, because if a jury looked at this and acquitted, it would be outright jury nullification. Mm-hmm. She can say these are falsified documents, but she can't say that was her principal residence. She can't say her father is her husband, and she can't say that a 5-unit building is a 4-unit building.
It just amazes me that she thinks she's going to get away with it, or to your point, maybe she didn't, but she didn't care because she didn't expect any problems with the jury there. Let me ask you this. It's a bit of a personal question, but not too personal. You've been a Democrat. You've been very much a civil libertarian during your career, most of your life. You go on Fox. You call him as you see him. It's not that you're defending Donald Trump. You're defending the system. That is, the Constitution. I have to imagine you're getting an earful from friends who might be former friends or colleagues and so forth. Am I right about that?
Oh, well, yes. I may have the longest running cancel campaign in history, because there's been a movement to have me fired at George Washington since I testified in the Clinton impeachment. Good Lord. And I've had actual partners at major firms in D.C. lead the effort to try to have me fired. These are partners at major firms who you would think would have a modicum of respect for a difference of opinion. But for most of the people that are dissenters in higher education, there's a familiar pattern. I mean, you are first shunned. You're not invited to speak. You're not put on committees. Your classes are messed with, things like that. But that's just the beginning. I mean, the number of center-to-right academics in this country has plummeted. Most universities have purged their ranks of any conservatives or Republicans. And the reason is that they're not only being investigated and fired, but they make life impossible. The cruelty of the system is really, or this movement, it can hardly be adequately described. They basically take everything away from you that fulfills an intellectual's life. And a good example of that was Mike Adams. He was in North Carolina, and they hit him repeatedly with investigations. And he had to go to court repeatedly. And then they opened another one. They just didn't stop. And finally, they got him to agree that he would take a settlement and leave teaching. And the day before he would no longer be a professor, he went home and blew his brains out.
Yeah.
And people don't understand that for people like Adams, people like me, being a professor is the only thing we ever wanted to be. And so this group knows that. And so that's why you have this purging that's going on. And what's funny, Mark, is I had this debate at Harvard with one of the faculty there. And I confronted him and said, less than 9% of your student body is conservative or Republican. Less than 3% of your faculty is conservative or Republican in a country that's about 50% or more conservative and Republican. And Professor Kennedy jumped in and said, this is Harvard. We're an elite institution. We don't have to look like America. And I said, you don't even look like Boston. I mean, Boston actually, Massachusetts has 30% Republican. But that's the mentality that you encounter at these schools.
See, I want the audience to know this. We have a very big audience here. I want them to know that when you come on there, Fox or here or somewhere, and you give your opinion, that you literally have a price to pay for this. And so when you write a book like you have, I've learned so much from your book, The Indispensable Right, Free Speech in the Age of Rage. You're not kidding. You're writing about, obviously, big issues and big events, but really you can tell it's from your heart because you're living this, aren't you, Professor?
I am. And I have a book coming out with the anniversary of the Declaration of Independence, the 250th anniversary. It'll be out at the beginning of the year. And it's the continuation of where I left off in the indispensable right. And what I explore there is this idea of what it is to be American, but also what what American democracy is all about. And both these, what I'm trying to say is that, it's a dangerous presumption that democracy in this country can withstand every possible movement. But it's a dangerous assumption. We have this anti-constitutional movement building in higher education. You have professors at top schools calling for the trashing of the U.S. Constitution, amending the First Amendment. That movement's gaining steam, and at risk is everything that defines us. It's ironic that as we approach the 250th anniversary of the Declaration, we are now having this existential struggle with people who want a different system. They want a different constitution, and they're being very open and express about it.
What's amazing about that group, too, Professor, is they trash the people who wrote it. They trash the Constitution, especially separation of powers. They get into all this, and then when they feel like they're cornered or they want to advance a particular point of view, they wave the Constitution around. Have you noticed that?
Yes, it is interesting, isn't it, how they often come home the minute they need it. And, what you're seeing today with a lot of these folks are really the same voices that we've heard throughout our history. They're the same people. They're making the same arguments. They're trying to tell a free people that it's time to give up some of their freedom, that the problems we face today are just unprecedented. They're not. And these are the same people, same voices that we have faced in every period of this republic. What's different, I think, is this alliance that they have of academia and the media and some people in the government. And that's what makes this really an existential, struggle for us.
Well, we appreciate you very, very much. You give very sober advice when you're out there talking about these events and so forth. And you don't let the popular will, should we call it, affect how you're analyzing these things. So it really is a pleasure to listen to you and to watch you. So take care of yourself. The book is The Indispensable Right, Free Speech in an Age of Rage. It's on all my platforms right now. You can go directly to Amazon.com. I strongly encourage you to grab a copy. Is essentially a Volume 2 coming out, so you want to grab Volume 1 while you can. Jonathan, thanks for coming on, my man. God bless you, brother.
Thanks, Mark. It's always a pleasure.
Likewise. Take care of yourself. It's sad. It's a sad thing what's going on in this country in academia. Academia isn't really academia. Academia is more like a propaganda-emia. Can I say that, Mr. Producer? I think I just did. But particularly if you are an academician and you're a professor and you work your whole life to become a full professor. And because of your views, and his views are very mainstream from a constitutionalist point of view. They're not crazy views. They're very smart views. He's asked, what do you think about this? And he applies the constitutional law. He explains himself, clear as day. That's why so many of you like him. Plain English. It's understandable. It's very logical. Point 1 to point 2 to point 3. You don't even have to agree all the time, but you absolutely do need to respect what he's saying. And it's not personal with him. It's not political with him. He's not like a Trump hater. If he has a disagreement, he'll say something. He won't say it over and over and over. He'll just say it. But then when he sees what he sees, he says what he sees. And look at this. A law school professor who teaches, among other things, constitutional law, who's being hounded. I knew he was. Just instinctively, I knew he had to be. It's too bad. It's sad. I'll be right back.
Mark Levin.
Don't get suckered into the same old free phone game by Big Wireless that comes with a lot of fine print, like requiring you to sign up for 4 lines plus activation fees, plus. And the end of the day, you've paid for that free phone 3 times over. Pure Talk is my sponsor, my wireless company. They have a much better offer. With a qualifying plan of just $35 a month, you can get a brand new Samsung Galaxy A26 for free. Now, this phone is virtually indestructible. Gorilla Glass captures beautiful wide-angle photos with next-generation camera lenses. All you need to do is switch to Pure Talk. For just $35 a month, you get unlimited talk, text, 15 gigs of data, more than you'll ever need, with mobile hotspot, all on one of America's most dependable 5G networks. Go to puretalk.com/Levin to make the switch. Again, that's puretalk.com/LEVIN to claim your free Samsung Galaxy with qualifying plan when you switch to Pure Talk. Wireless by Americans for Americans. I can't believe the show is 2/3 over. We have hour 3. Don't forget, ladies and gentlemen, you can always listen to this show any time of day or night, all 3 hours or not. With our great affiliates, with satellite radio, online, but you can always go to Mark Levin Show. Excuse me. Wow, Mark Levin Show on YouTube. We have our own YouTube channel. You go to your YouTube and type in Mark Levin Show, or we podcast the program as well. You go to your favorite podcast platform, and again, you type in Mark Levin Show, right, Mr. Producer? It's that simple. And you'll never miss the show. We have lots of important things going on all 3 hours, typically breaking news in the 3rd hour too, so don't miss us. We'll be right back.
He's here. Now, broadcasting from the underground command post, deep in the bowels of a hidden bunker, somewhere under the brick and steel of a nondescript building, we've once again made contact with our leader, Mark Levin.
Hello, America. Mark Levin here. Our number, help, 877-381-3811, 877-381-3811, Mr. Producer. Oh, yeah. I've got a lot of roads I can take here. I want to take one that I think will interest you. It's not a news article. It's not a news event. You want to have a little bit of fun? Let's have a little bit of fun. We like to do a lot of thinking here, don't we? Exploring ideas. So here's my question for you. In the Declaration of Independence, it talks about unalienable rights. It talks about life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. Happiness. It talks about natural law and natural rights. Universal truths. What are they talking about? Where does all this come from? Where does it come from? Now, if you said John Locke, you'd be right. If you say Montesquieu, you'd be right. But not completely right. What do you mean, Mark? It comes from God. That is, natural law and natural rights. What makes them natural? God. Stay with me, even those of you who don't believe in God. Stick with me. You're going to, I think, find this interesting. When I say, and I say often, the people are sovereign, not the government, not any institution that lords over the people are sovereign. Where does that come from? It comes from God. God is sovereign. We are God's children. God is sovereign. We are God's children, each and every one of you, and we collectively. We are the sovereign because we get our sovereignty from God. That's why the government can never be sovereign. The ruling class can never be sovereign. Dictators can never be sovereign. It comes from God. Now, where does this idea come from, that these things come from God? This is what I do every weekend, every morning, every night. Anyway, where does that come from? First, it comes from Judaism. First, it comes from Judaism. And then Christianity is born. And Christianity and Judaism embrace the same understanding of God and sovereignty. By that I don't mean Jesus. I mean God as an energy force, as a belief. Can be a human being too, but God. For some people, it can be. For other people, it can't be. I don't want to get into that. That's not the point. This is where we get our Judeo-Christian understanding from. God. We're sovereign because of God. We're not sovereign just because we're human beings, just because we're people, just because we're individuals. It doesn't even make any sense, does it? Now, for those of you who say, wait a minute, you know what? I'm a Christian, I'm a Jew, I'm a this, I'm a that. But I don't buy this stuff. You don't have to. That's the great thing about what? The Enlightenment. The Enlightenment. Or the West, if you prefer. You had Reformation, you had the Enlightenment. When Thomas Jefferson is asked where all these ideas come from the Constitution, he lists a number of the philosophers that they relied on, including Locke, John Locke, who was the most important philosopher during the Revolutionary period, and Montesquieu was the most important philosopher to the framers of the Constitution. They get 3 branches of government from him. Now, there were ideas about dividing government, dividing power. Go back again to the Jews, the earliest, the ancient Jews, the ancient Christians, goes back to ancient Athens and Aristotle, goes back to ancient Rome and Cicero and all this. Just listen to me, this is important. The United States is the first country on the face of the earth. Excuse me. It's the first country on the face of the earth. It's the only country ever to be founded on these principles. There's been no other. None. And they are most concisely and brilliantly stated in the Declaration of Independence. Now, it doesn't say it all, but it says a lot. It says a lot. So when we talk that the people are sovereign, it's because we're God's children. The government's not God's children. This is why these totalitarian regimes, the autocracies, they wish to destroy religion. Marxism wants to destroy religion because what? All the talk about the workers' paradise and the bourgeoisie versus the proletariat and the people, and so the sovereign in communist regimes is the party. And the party is the government. There is no God, they preach. Stick with me. Then we have Islamists. That's different than Muslims. They are Muslims, but they're Islamists. They're terrorists. They have a completely different idea as well. Both the Islamists and the Marxists seek the destruction of the West because the West gets into the way of the perfect society that Marx talks about. And the West gets into the way, of course, of the of the Islamists. This is why you see the fusion of the two that I've been talking about for years now. You see them on our college campuses. You even see them when it comes to military alliances with Iran and China and so forth. The ends justify the means, even though if there's an end and they're both left, they'll try and destroy each other. We come from this from a completely different perspective. Now, here's the thing, and I wrote about this in Liberty and Tyranny, and I'll write about it more. Perhaps some of you say, look, that's all well and good. I don't believe in God. Or I don't have a great embrace of God. Yeah, I'm born a Jew. I'm born a Christian. I'm born this. You know, I go to church. I go to synagogue. But this whole thing, I'm just not into it. Or maybe you're just a flat-out atheist. I just don't believe in any of this stuff. Or an agnostic. I'm not sure what I believe in, but I don't believe in that. Or you can go on and on and on. Okay, great. You're very lucky. What do I mean by that? You don't have to believe in anything. That's the great thing about the Western culture, the Enlightenment, tolerance, diversity, all these things. But you could never build a society around believing in nothing. You could never build a just society where the people are the sovereign just because you say so, and just because you hope the government will ensure that it's the case. Because the government, most of the time, over time, becomes increasingly autocratic, no matter what kind of government it is, unfortunately. But my point to you is, it's not a simple point, but it's a crucial point. Those of you who are more secularists, that's fine. You get to live in a society that's not. And you should be thankful for that, whatever your beliefs. I am thankful that America is a Christian majority country. I'm thankful as a Jew because I know about Judeo-Christian principles and values. And it's a tiny minority in a very big country. I'm thankful. This is why any opportunity I have to talk about Christians supporting the Holy Land and so forth and so on, I'm in. I'm 100% for it. Sovereignty comes from God. Your sovereignty is the people. Same thing. We'll be right back.
Mark Levin.
We're here, ladies and gentlemen, with our friend, good friend, Kevin Roberts, the president of the Heritage Foundation, one of the great think tanks in America. Really is one of the great think tanks in America. Oh, 2025. Oh, let me burn my house down. I'm so worried about it. Kevin, how are you, my friend?
Man, I'm doing great. It's always wonderful when I am with you. Just the best in the business. Thanks for everything you're doing.
Well, it's a great honor. Thank you. And want the people to know that you're going to be a major sponsor on our podcast. And we're very, very proud of that. And Kevin, you guys are doing a fantastic job. They're trying to take you guys out with Project 2020. Tell me, what was that like, by the way?
You know, ultimately, we're proud of the work. You know, I don't want to bury the lead, but for 2 or 3 months, as the left succeeded in mischaracterizing it, I mean, literally everything they said, it wasn't fun. I mean, the people threatened heritage, they threatened to burn us down, all this kind of stuff. But I want to drive to a particular point. Now, as we sit in early 2025 and we see what President Trump and Vice President Vance are doing, and they deserve all the credit for that, right? They've assembled a tremendous cabinet. If we had even a tiny role in providing the plans and the research and the legal concepts for them returning the American dream to the American people, every bit of that nonsense that the left brought to our doorstep and then some was worth it. I can tell you on behalf of all of my colleagues at Heritage, we're extraordinarily proud of our work. And I will also tell you, Mark, we're already starting Project 2029 because we are not tired of winning.
I love that. In other words, you're not gonna You're going to get in the fetal position because of the left. That's what the left tries to do, right? Take people out, and I guess this is the modern day wokeism.
No, it's true. As I told MSNBC, I mentioned to the autocrats at Davos, be careful if you start a fight, if you pick a fight with a group of people, in this case, heritage friends, including you, who will finish the fight. And we mean that in a figurative sense. It's a fight on behalf of the everyday American who's been forgotten by policymakers in Washington and New York and Brussels. And if anything, even though Heritage every 4 years has done this project, it's motivated us to do this continually on a scale that involves every institution on the right who wants to be part of real change. And ultimately, as the vice president said 2 weeks ago when he was at Heritage for a really special event, this is an effort, this revolution of common sense that we're not going to be successful in over 1 year. We really have to be thinking in terms of a generation, 25 or 30 years to get this country back on track. We're grateful to play a small part in it.
You play a big part. Isn't it amazing what's been done in 3 months or so already? Have you ever seen anything like this?
No, earlier today I was with some members of the mainstream media at a different news outlet because at Heritage we go anywhere, talk to anybody, anytime, and they were kind of complaining and wanting me to commiserate with them about the pace of change. And I was sitting there privately just very gleeful thinking, this is the first time in my life, I'm 50 years old, that conservatives, God bless Donald Trump, are moving with this pace. But as you know, and you talk about every day, Mark, because beyond being a friend of the show, I'm an avid listener of the show, we have to have this pace of change to scale back nearly a century of government overreach. If we don't have that kind of attitude and the pace and the energy that President Trump is bringing to it, we're going to miss the opportunity that God has given us.
100%. So every day matters. And what you folks at Heritage, you're always have interesting projects. You're very flexible. You can move in one direction or another in terms of taking advantage of of circumstances and so forth. What one or two things is Heritage really focused on right now? Or are there more than that?
Well, there are more than that, but I know that time is of course, a precious resource, so I'll mention two. The first is we are zealously focused right now on state legislative work. A lot of people know us for our work on federal policy. We'll continue to be, of course, a major voice in that. But over the last 3.5 years, as I have led Heritage coming out of the state policy area, I have tried to bring to Heritage, and my colleagues, of course, lead this now, a real emphasis on revitalizing federalism. And the way we do that isn't just to right-size policy and politics in Washington. We also, at the same time, have to make sure that as conservatives control a majority of governorships and state legislatures in this country, that we take advantage of that opportunity there. And so as we're having this conversation, Mark, this long-time effort, 35-year effort to pass universal school choice in Texas is about to happen. Heritage, I want to be clear, is not the sole reason for that. We're just one part of that. But the point is we're really emphasizing this revitalization of federalism, and that's going to benefit us in Washington for a long time. But the second thing that we do, to your point about being nimble, is that you know Heritage well to know that we don't wake up each day and decide that we're going to be fans of tariffs. We understand that tariffs are taxes. I also understand as an early American historian that going back to the days of Alexander Hamilton, using tariffs as a tool of statecraft and for national security can be a vital part of what is conservatism. And so what we're focused on right now is keeping the political right together with a zealous focus on China and reciprocal tariffs, trying to help the administration, but also trying to give the administration some guardrails about not going too far so that we don't upset the markets too much. Ultimately, we're on board with that, but I understand, in fact, I hear this firsthand every day, Mark, from friends like you and from financiers of the conservative movement. that while they may not be the biggest fan of tariffs, they understand that as a tool of statecraft, it can be used to help restore the American dream. Heritage, the bottom line, plays a central role in convening all of those different voices, letting people debate and air their differences of opinion, but at the end of the day say, we're going to try to help implement policy from the standpoint of the hardworking American rather than from the K Street lobbyist.
You're listening to Kevin Roberts, the great president of Heritage Foundation. Kevin, if people want to know more, where do they go?
Heritage.org. They can also follow me on X at Kevin Roberts TX.
Heritage.org, folks. I bookmark that. I check them all the time. You know how many fantastic experts we bring on this program from Heritage, not the least of whom is Kevin Roberts. Kevin, look forward to more appearances. Take care of yourself, brother.
Our man, take care. God bless you.
God bless you, too. We'll be right back.
Mark Levin, making conservatism great again. Dial in now, 877-381-3811.
All right, let's take a few calls here, I would say. Let's do it. Diane, Fairfax County, Virginia. The great WMAL. How are you?
I'm well. How are you, Mark?
Very well, thank you. Very good.
So I'd like to share the following. Earlier in your program, you referenced the fact that we don't have the quote-unquote infrastructure to accommodate what's being demanded by these, I'm going to call them what they are.
To do due process for millions of illegal aliens, yep.
Yep. And, as a taxpayer, an American citizen, I'd say that we don't owe anyone at my expense and to American taxpayers' expenses, the building of a quote-unquote legal infrastructure to accommodate the individual circumstances of any person in this country illegally. We're not going to reconfigure or reimagine our legal system or our Constitution to make the illegal legal.
Well, unfortunately, you and I apparently don't have any say in this. Nobody's asking us. These judges are trying to impose it on us, which is why I fight this every damn day behind this microphone and on television when I'm there. And I want the people who are on the left and the never-Trumpers and so forth and so on to explain to us exactly how this is going to work. Tell us what it is that you're demanding of us. Tell us how millions and millions of people are going to have an opportunity to get in front of some kind of a judge somewhere, some kind of a person somewhere, and how this is supposed to work. Hans von Spakovsky explained that, well, at least with about 2 million of them, we don't have to, and that's a great thing. But there's at least 11 million of them, and there's got to be more than that because there was 11 million of them before Biden came into office, so there's got to be 20 million. I know of no way to process all this, none. And to respond to you as well, it doesn't matter how many immigration judges, so-called, or bureaucrats that they hire. It'll never be enough. But this has to be dealt with. These people have to be deported because, don't forget, Diane, there is what they call birthright citizenship. You and I may disagree with it, but they're still playing by that rule. And number two, even more, there's chain migration. Chain migration. And when the Democrats come back, because at some point they will, and they'll have both houses in the presidency, they're going to give amnesty to these 20 million people. And you're going to have chain migration, which turns 20 million into 100 million. And your country's gone. It's gone. Yep. So all these people who want to talk about due process, they must tell us exactly what they're talking about. Not just theoretical and beat their chests and pat themselves on the head in a circle form, if you get my point, where they're talking to each other. I want to know exactly. I want to see the blueprint for this. And what are we talking about? If somebody's picked up right on the border by a Border Patrol agent, they're here illegally, do they get due process, or can you push them back over the border politely and say goodbye? From what point and to what extent do they get due process? From whom do they get due process? How is it constitutionally structured? That is, this lower form of due process, if there is a lower form of due process. I have 1,000 questions that no Supreme Court ruling in the past has answered. I have 1,000 questions on how we're supposed to do this. Because for the reasons I said in this post, Diane, and the reasons I said on this air, This was a setup from day one. Millions of people coming in here, overwhelming the immigration system, overwhelming the legal system. Then they appoint 235 quote-unquote progressive judges at the district court level, according to Schumer, I'm quoting him, who make it virtually impossible to deport anybody. And so they bring these people in, then they protect them, then they say, oh, we got to have due process for everybody. Well, Mark, what else are we going to do? I don't know, but this isn't going to work. So I'm with you. All right, Diane, thank you for your call. Take care of yourself. Okay. Let's go. Let's go to Chris, Montrose, Colorado, the great KNZZ. Chris, how may I help you, sir?
Mark, I appreciate you taking my call. I had an issue I want to talk about, but before I do, due process doesn't have different levels, and I am an attorney. Due process is what's due. Your example of the guy that just stepped across the border, can you push him back across? That would be due. It's not a different level. It's what is due in the moment.
No, I understand, but I'm not talking about what you and I think. I'm talking about what the courts will compel. So my point is, if they're going, tell us what levels, that is, that you're going to concoct, that you're going to create. Tell us exactly what you have in mind. Let me step back. Tell us what you have in mind here. Will full due process apply to everybody? Some other level of due process? Who is going to be making that decision? Is it the Supreme Court? On the ground level, who is going to execute it? And there's millions of people, most of whom won't show up for anything. They just disappear into the population. So as a practical matter, I want these folks to tell us what they're talking about. Anyway, go ahead.
Don't talk about different levels of due process. They get what is
I am
due.
going to talk
It's
about levels of due process
process
because I know that's what's coming.
Okay. I want to talk about the radical judges and how Trump might deal with the threat of criminal contempt proceedings. I think that Donald Trump should give a preemptive pardon. And again, I'm a lawyer. I missed that day when preemptive pardons were discussed. I think
me too.
It's an abomination. But since it's now a thing, Trump can preemptively pardon the entire Justice Department, turn them loose, let them do their jobs without fear of recrimination from these judges. What's wrong with that?
Well, a lot of the people at the Justice Department aren't our friends, so I don't know that they know who those are yet. But I think you're onto something interesting in a more confined context. Anybody who was involved in this case, it seems to me you can do a preemptive pardon, right? So maybe that's an idea. It's not a bad idea. I'm not a huge person in favor of doing it just because the left did it. But sometimes I reach a point where you got to do what they do. You're in the mud. And you got to deal with it as it is. I think they have some other shots to it that they need to take. I would file a mandamus with the Supreme Court, and I would say, you just ordered this guy and told him he doesn't have jurisdiction, but he won't let go of the case. Now, he wants to hold us in criminal contempt, but he says the only way to resolve that is if we fix the problem that he accuses us of creating, violating his order. And in order to fix it, on page 43 and 44 of his opinion, Mr. Attorney, he says, here's some ideas, and his ideas all involve giving some form of a process to these individuals who are in these prisons. Says you don't have to bring them back, but you have to come up with something else. So his answer is that he holds on to the case. This case is supposed to be in Texas. That's what you said. That's what I would do. And as Hans pointed out, he didn't have jurisdiction from the get-go. So order or no order, his order is null and void. He never had jurisdiction. He doesn't have jurisdiction. And that's what I would go back to the Supreme Court with.
Final thought. If Trump granted immunity and the left rebelled and said, oh, he can't do that, well...
I know what you're going to say. Then the immunity for the J6 committee and the others so forth doesn't hold.
And the Biden crime family syndicate can be prosecuted.
All right. Thanks for your call. All right. Some good ideas from the counselor there. Let's keep going. What do we got here? Yeah, let's go to our buddy Jimmy, Brooklyn, New York, the great WABC. Jimmy, how are you, buddy?
All righty. This Senator Chris Van Hollen, going down to El Salvador, this man works with a group called Council for a Livable World, which was founded by a proven Soviet spy during World War II, a guy named Leo Szilard. And this guy, Van Hollen, this Council for a Livable World is extremely important because it pretty much is the group that put Biden in office. So this is a group that's also connected to the tax-exempt KGB front group, Institute for Policy Studies.
All right, hold on now, Jimmy. Now, who, among others, but who was the primary founder of the Institute for Policy Studies?
Marcus Raskin, the father of Jamie Raskin.
Exactly. And that's why Jamie Raskin won't come on this program, isn't it?
He won't talk to you. He can't handle anybody like us, like you or me or whoever else is.
Because his father was a big ally of the old Soviet Union, wasn't he, Jimmy?
That's right. They supported the enemy during the Cold War, and they still have a lot of influence in this country. In fact, the senior fellow from that group is Francis Fox Pivens, who said we're going to get the changes we want largely through minorities and immigration. I was in the audience when she said that. So you got this Institute for Policy Studies, and they basically, the Soviet Academy of Sciences, within that you have the Institute for the Study of USA and Canada. So the Institute for Study of USA and Canada, they know our history, our Constitution better than most Americans. They know us in order to work how to defeat us, how to use our system against ourselves. But that gets brought down to the Institute for Policy Studies, and then it goes all throughout the Democrat Party. It goes to the New York Times, Washington Post.
Is it not amazing to you, and then, Jimmy, I got to break for a hard break. Is it not amazing to you, with all the media out there, and Raskin appears day in and day out, that only I bring up the Institute for Policy Studies and his father and their connection to the old Soviet Union? Isn't that amazing to you?
It is amazing that even other conservatives don't talk about it. That was one of my first calls to Bob Grant 38 years ago. Now, here's another thing, real quick. We have 50 million abortions in this country, and we also have doctors getting paid to persuade elderly patients to sign "Do not resuscitate." This is a slippery slope. So you're ending the life at the beginning, you're ending the life at the end. The slippery slope works toward the middle, and now 55% of liberal Democrats support killing President Trump.
That's pretty sick, or they don't oppose it. You're right. All right, Jimmy, thanks for your call. Appreciate it. Israel's still under attack. Missiles from the Houthis, Hezbollah, Hamas. I'll be right back.
Mark Levin.
Let's go back to the caller, shall we? I think we can. Hopestown, I think they mean Hope Sound, Florida. Hope Sound, WJNO, right? Hope Sound, Florida?
Yes,
yep.
Mark, that's Hope
Larry,
Sound.
how are you, buddy?
Neighbors.
All right, don't tell everybody, but nice to see you, Larry.
Thank you. It's great always to be with you. Just a quick thing before I get to my point.
Have we ever met?
Are you? We have. I met you at the one of your
at a restaurant. I'm sure. Where?
When you were signing books at the mall in Palm Beach Gardens.
Oh, that's a while ago. Well, good to talk to you, Larry. I love Hope Sound, by the way. Go right ahead.
Just a quick point before I get to my point. Florida was given an extension for filing federal income tax returns till the end of the month, along with a couple of other states that had severe natural disasters during the past year. So they got a little bit of a break. But anyways, I got what might be a simple solution, temporary as it might be. U.S. Marshals report to Pam Bondi. They provide security for all the courthouses, federal buildings, and judges. There's no reason that she couldn't, I don't believe that she couldn't temporarily assign all the marshals to this judge's district to do ICE duty and therefore shut the courthouses and the personal protection right down.
They're not going to do that. To pull their security away, can you imagine the reaction to that? I have a better idea. It's a constitutional idea. It's up front. It's straightforward. Congress take the steps to eliminate some of these judges. Even if they don't get it done, they can get it done if they attach it to the to some kind of budget or spending bill to avoid the filibuster. I mean, if they can do that, they should do that. That's the way to do it. They don't need to be dancing around the wildfire out there. They don't need to be dancing around at all. They just do it. Just eliminate some of this. Boasberg is totally out of control. I mean, I can name 25 of them. Pick 2, 3, 4, 5 of them and move immediately to eliminate their positions. Their conduct is absolutely appalling. That's what I would do anyway, Larry. If I see you again, remind me that you called, and God bless you, brother. Great calls, great guests, fantastic audience always. Thank you. We salute our armed forces, police officers, firefighters, emergency personnel, our truckers, the men and women in Ukraine, the men and women in Israel, our brothers and sisters, you folks, the greatest people on the face of the earth, you. And I'll see you tomorrow. Have a good evening.